Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Sabrina Feliz, and I will be your Cloud World Languages host for this webinar titled Successfully Embed Social and Emotional Learning in Your Language Classes. We believe that this is an important topic, and we are very happy to have our speaker, Berta Delgadillo, to tell us more about it. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Berta. She's a high school Spanish teacher who teaches levels 2, 3, and AP Spanish language and culture in Savannah, Georgia. She's also a national board certified teacher and serves as the lead facilitator for the high school Spanish professional education, world language, and global workforce initiatives. Last weekend, she received the World Languages Teacher of the Year award by the FLAG. So thank you very much for joining us, Berta. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here this evening. Thank you to everybody who has made the time to join me in this session where we are going to talk about practical ways to embed social emotional learning in our language classes. And I am certain you will find something to take away that you can use to get started as soon as tomorrow. And I cannot wait to hear your takeaways towards the end of the webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. Social emotional learning, it's something that is just dear to me, to my heart, because my teachers, my high school teachers and my middle school teachers were the ones who taught me a lot of what I'm doing today with my students. Hello, everybody. I am noticing that we have people checking in from many places, and I'm so glad to see some new names and some familiar names as well. So what are we going to see today in this webinar? First, we're going to explore the benefits of social and emotional learning specific to the language classroom, but a lot of what is in general, what we know about it also applies to language classroom, and we'll kind of see how that goes. We will also identify SEL competencies and align these with some effective language acquisition activities. Because many times we feel that social emotional learning is one more thing to do, when in fact, we are already doing many of the things that have to do with social emotional learning already inside our world language classes. Third, we're going to gain a clear idea of how to help learners strengthen both their social emotional learning and language skills. And finally, of course, I will share and I will point you to some resources so that you can start a toolkit with practical and sustainable social emotional learning implementation ideas. So I am so glad to see that everybody's come together to discuss this topic. First, we're going to talk about the benefits of social emotional learning, and many of these pictures that you are going to see in this next couple of slides come from CASEL. And these are pictures that you yourself, if you would like to talk about social emotional learning to your administration or to your team, you can use these slides. They are totally free for you to use, and they are nicely designed with all the stats already. We know that social emotional learning is in demand. 99% of the school principals are saying that social emotional learning is critical in school. And 90% of the teachers believe that SEL improves academics. And 99% of educators also see that SEL improves student outcomes. Why? Because students want to be in a place where they feel supported and when they feel heard and understood and where they feel that they belong. And so that is one of the big things, of the big benefits, that we know that social emotional learning works, and the research is there. And again, you can find it at the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, known as CASEL. And they have a very complete website with many resources for you to read and for you to implement as well. So we cannot talk about social emotional learning without defining what social emotional learning is. And it is actually the process through which all the young people and the adults, on the process in which we acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities and to manage our emotions and achieve personal and collective goals, to feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first saw the definition of social emotional learning, I know that for me, my own SEL has been has always continued to grow and evolve. So sometimes we may see, well, how can we teach our learners this if I don't feel strong at this specific skill? But we can. Does not mean we have to be amazing at how to manage our emotions, but it helps. So it is something, when we are bringing social emotional learning to the classroom, it is something that we ourselves can grow in the process with our learners. And with that definition, I want to share a little bit with you. I have already mentioned how in my beginning, when I came to the United States, I am originally from Mexico, and I teach in Savannah, Georgia. However, I grew up in a little town called Claxton, Georgia. And when I came to the United States, I was 11 years old. And here you're going to see a picture of me. And and it is, I was taking some type of assessment, and I was in my high school years. But the reason why I have this picture of me is because during those years, I had many instructors who they had no idea what was going on in my life. However, they were there for me. They made me feel like I belong in the classroom. They made me feel like what my work mattered, whether that was my academic work or my opinions. And I am just so grateful for them. And I can tell you one example of this is when I arrived back to middle school. When I arrived to the United States and I was 11, I did not speak much English at all. And I remember my ELA teacher, she always made it a point to bring, for example, we were doing some stories from Sandra Cisneros, and she had me read the stories in Spanish for the entire class. This was an English language arts class. That moment, I can still remember it to this day. It was very special. Did she have an audio recording to play Sandra Cisneros herself reading that story, that poem? Absolutely, yes. But she had me do it. And now I see there was a purpose for that, because I was a very silent student for the same reason that I was not yet speaking English fluently. And then something else that this particular teacher did later on is that she always encouraged me to read. And I would read, obviously, a little bit below level because it was my first year in the United States. And as she saw me grow, she managed to get a book in Spanish. And then she started getting more books for me in Spanish. And that to me meant so much because at that time in my classroom, I was the only Hispanic student. Another example I could share with you is when I was very, very troubled during my high school years because I did not know if I was going to go to college or not because I was not smart enough to do it, not because of many other reasons we can think of. It was because of my legal situation at the time. I did not know if I was going to be able to go to college. So can you put yourself in the shoes of a young learner in high school who loves education and who really enjoys school, but you're told we don't know if you're going to go to college because maybe we're not going to be able to afford it, and maybe you won't be allowed to be in college. And that was my situation essentially during high school. But I had another ELA teacher who totally just would give me journal prompts, and she would not just give us journal prompts to write. And the journal prompts were about our dreams and our hopes and our obstacles and all those sort of things. But she did not stop there. In every journal prompt where I wrote, I used that as just, she did not know, but I was actually answering very, very honestly in my journal prompts. And she would leave me little bits of feedback. Sometimes she would correct my grammar in my ELA class, but sometimes she would ask me a question and we will have a conversation back and forth through that journal. And that was very special. And that, my friends, is social emotional learning. Thanks to all of those teachers and many more teachers that I came across in middle school, high school, and even in college. All the teachers who supported me along the way, thanks to them, it is that I was able to get my degree, my bachelor's degree, and even my master's degree. And that's why I'm sharing this picture with you today. And I'm sharing this because I really believe in the power of social emotional learning. And it's been there before, years ago, before it was even called social emotional learning. There are things that the teachers from who have retired already have been implementing. That is social emotional learning. So it is a good practice. So essentially, I already told you that without my teachers, I would not have been able to graduate. I would not have been able to stay strong against the adversity because of everything they did for me. But I want to share with you some other social emotional learning benefits that you will see in a school that employs social emotional learning. So we know that it boosts academic by 11 percentile points. We know that it increases well-being up to 18 years later and decrease likelihood of receiving public assistance. We know that it helps students manage stress and depression and improve their attitudes about themselves, others, and school. And we also know that the employees, especially, I know that at my school, we have looked at this number very, very, just with a lot of attention because we are a career and tech school, the high school where I teach Spanish. And I know that this is very important to us. Employers want skills. They want to see the social emotional learning skills, and they are equal to or more important than technical skills. So we're going to talk more about how we can help our learners develop these skills in our target language. And also, we know that parents are also agreeing and they are believing that social emotional learning is important in helping children navigate today's world. And the reality is that our students spend more time with us many times than what they do, that the time they spend with their parents. So for that reason, and because we just came out of a pandemic and all of that, that is why social emotional learning is so important in our classes. 76% of high schoolers also say that they want to attend a school that prioritizes social emotional learning. So this is again from the CASEL website, but I can tell you that I have surveyed my learners year after year after year, and they can agree. Perhaps my own numbers are a little bit higher than this because my students, they know that many of the activities we do are SEL activities. And I just very honestly ask them, what do you think about this activity? Tell me your feedback. I want to know more. And I listen and I tweak. So for my learners, this is something that matters a lot. And I will share more as we go on about what my students have said about social emotional learning. And it is, as we say, it is on demand because 73% of the counselors say that social emotional learning is as important as developing academic knowledge for student success. And going back to supporting workforce development, 6 of the top 10 in-demand career skills involve social emotional learning, like complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. So we have so many reasons to consider bringing this to our classroom. And social emotional learning also builds a beautiful community. And I know that in our world language classrooms, we want to build that community. And here is something that my learners have shared with me about how they feel with regards to social emotional learning. These are words from my students, especially when we are talking about a particular activity that I call a check-in. This is not an activity that was invented by me. In fact, I have no idea who came up with it. I know I saw it from an ELA teacher, English language arts teacher somewhere, and then I tweaked it for Spanish in my classroom. So it starts with asking the students how they're feeling. So why do I continue to do this? I started doing this with a lot of intention the first year of the pandemic. And ever since then, I have not stopped. I have only tweaked how and changed a little bit how I do it, just to maximize and get my students to express themselves more about how they're feeling. But this is what my learners say. They say, I like that we can engage with each other and not automatically jump into class. It makes me feel relieved. Another student said, it makes me feel cared for by my teachers. And these activities give us the opportunity to really get to know everyone in class, and that does not happen in every class. In this class, I feel a connection to almost everyone. And then one more said, I don't like missing this class. I really hate to miss it because of the power of social emotional learning. And in conclusion, why am I sharing? I'm saying all of this because in conclusion, I just want to share with you that social emotional learning can increase academic performance in your class. It will definitely raise student investment and student engagement. So that is something that I really, really want to say loud and clear, because we can do social emotional learning in the classroom, and we will see that it definitely has a lot of benefits. So my question for you today, and I'm going to ask you, and you please feel free to answer the question in the chat. Have you ever led your students to make cultural connections in the classroom? I mean, that is at the core of what we do in our classes. Have you ever led your students to say, hey, we're discussing X topic in the target language, and we say, okay, turn and talk, and then we're going to share. Have you ever asked your students to journal in the target language on a specific topic? Have you ever asked your learners to proofread their work? Have you asked your students to self-assess an essay or a written piece or a speaking sample? Have you ever asked your students to provide feedback for each other? And I'm seeing a lot of yeses in the chat. Have you ever done calendar talk? And have you ever done mindfulness activities in the target language? Have you had your students participate in a collaborative activities? So this is not an all-inclusive list of social emotional learning activities, but many of these activities, well, all of these activities are social emotional learning in nature. And that is great news, because that means that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to it's always great to bring new activities, and I'm going to share some new activities with you. But you are already doing a lot of social emotional learning in your classes by doing these activities. And I wanted to make that connection, because many times we feel that we're not doing enough. You are already doing a lot of social emotional learning in the class. And yes, we have several questions, and I will answer those questions at the end of the session. And I am seeing those questions. So first, if we want to bring social emotional learning, if we want to justify what we do when it comes to social emotional learning to our administration, to whoever, we must be able to identify the SEL language competencies. So we have 5 competencies that deal with social emotional learning. And we have self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision-making. I'm gonna go more in depth for each one of these, but let's talk about how we can align these with effective language acquisition activities. When we are referring to self-awareness, we're talking about identifying and expressing emotions, talking about how we feel or how something makes us feel. We are talking about mindfulness. We're talking about self-esteem, and how do we ever talk about self-esteem in the classroom? How do we see ourselves? We're talking about gaining confidence or having that confidence. These are some example activities or some things when we see self-awareness, that's what we are referring to, identifying and expressing emotions and mindfulness activities, self-esteem and confidence. When we are referring to self-management, we are referring to managing emotions, resilience, managing stress, and self-motivation. So I want you to tell me in the chat, if you please would, when it comes to self-awareness, if there is something that comes to your mind that you are already doing, whether it's part of your practice or of a unit that you already do with your students that will tie into self-awareness. What are some activities that you have done with your learners already, or a unit that you have already done that has to do with self-awareness? So I'm going to give a moment, just a thinking moment. Post-assessment reflections. Mindfulness, take a breath, reflection journals, reflect on essays, test progress, tracking their own progress, writing journals, learning how to give presentations. That's great to boost confidence. Excellent. Coloring brain breaks. ¿Cómo estás? How are you doing? Check-ins at the beginning of class. Amazing. So yes, all of these are wonderful, wonderful ways to focus on self-awareness, to focus on self-management. I am going to share this video. This is one of my very favorite videos, and I don't think I share the sound, but I'm going to share the sound right this moment. I'm going to share this video, and if you haven't checked out this video is amazing. It's by Carolina, who is a wonderful Spanish teacher for elementary school students, and it is her YouTube channel is called Spanish Together. I teach high school Spanish, and I teach level 2, 3, and AP. And what I do with my students, I do these activities with my students, and Carolina made these activities for her students. However, my students enjoy it so much. And when I introduced it the first time, I simply play the video and I let Carolina guide my students, and I do the activity with my learners, because it is very important. Anything we're going to ask our learners to do when it comes to social emotional learning, whether that's learning how to take a deep breath, or whether that is talking about how we are doing or how we're feeling, that requires a certain level of vulnerability on behalf of our learners, and we have to meet them first. So with social emotional learning, we do not meet them halfway. We get there first and we model, because we have to be vulnerable first. I know that for middle school and maybe high school, definitely for high school, but for middle school and high school, they may feel like, oh, that is silly. But no, we talk to them about the importance of why we're doing what we're doing. So if we're going to take deep breaths, we can talk to them about why it is important. And we can say something like, well, when you are taking a test, do you get nervous? And we can do this in the target language or not. And we can say, do you get nervous or not? And then many of them do. And it's important that, you're going to have a couple of them share. Not all of them are going to share, but you're going to see some hands go up. And just them seeing that other people also get nervous during tests, it just eases everything. And then something that I've shared that is very personal to me, another reason why social emotional learning is so important to me, it's because after the pandemic, I developed generalized anxiety disorder. And I struggled a lot for about 2 years with that. And I had to learn a lot of managing emotions and stress relieving skills that I did not know, that I wasn't aware of. I did not even know how to calm myself down. And I had to learn many of those things. So I share with my students about my own journey. I share about my own journey with learning how to take deep breaths, and how I, as an adult, to this day, still use this to help me calm down at specific moments. How I, as an adult, now use these skills to help me draw boundaries. So we're going to do, if you could please try with me this, because I'm going to do it here with you. And we're going to listen to Carolina, and we are going to do some of these activities. Now, This activity is in Spanish, but I want, if you are a teacher, I know I have French teachers in here, German teachers in here, so if, and possibly other languages as well. If you're a teacher of other languages, if you go to YouTube, you will find several videos that have taking deep breaths, and you will be able to see how you will be able to see different videos of how they model these. There's a ton of them. Of course, for Spanish, there's a ton of them, but I know for a fact that there are many of them in other languages as well. So we're gonna play this video and we're going to do this together, okay? So let's, and we might not do all 6 of them because she has 6 different ones. And when I do this activity with my students, I do it as a brain break. I know someone in here in the chat mentioned brain breaks, and we are going to talk a little bit about brain breaks. But when I introduce this, it is either before we're going to take a major test sometimes, or during a brain break, just so that my students can learn and remember how to calm themselves down through doing these types of exercises. Okay, so I'm going to play it and we're going to do it together. See.
Hola, vamos a hacer ejercicios de respiración.
Okay.
¿Listos? Número 1. El globo.
Okay.
Inhala.
Inhala.
Exhala. Inhala. Exhala. Inhala. Exhala. Muy bien. Número 2. El cohete. Inhala. Exhala. Inhala. Exhala. Muy bien. Número 3. Los fuegos artificiales. Inhala. Exhala. Inhala. Exhala. Muy bien. Número 4. El cocodrilo. Inhala.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there, but there are about 6 of them and they're all wonderful. And when you bring it to your students, you can show them the entire video. I do this with my high schoolers and we learn how to do all 6 of them. They will find a favorite. And I don't only show it to them one time, I show it to them many times during the month. And they already know Carolina. They feel like they know Carolina. So, and of course, I do it with them, just like I did it here to model it for you, even though I have Carolina to do it beautifully for me through this video. I still do it with my students. And sometimes I do these breaks because I need them myself for me. I have 90-minute classes and I need these breaks as well. And it is so important to acknowledge that we need breaks because sometimes we we tend to just get on that mode and never stop until we burn out as educators, and our students also can burn out. So this is a wonderful activity. And again, if you are a teacher of other language, I am certain that just with the wonderful visuals of this video, you can model yourself with just a picture of a crocodile or just a picture of the firework, and you can model it yourself in your target language. So this other activity, this for self-management that I'm going to share with you has to do, this is from an Instagram page, but I actually have link there. This is, you don't have to have an Instagram account you can play and mute. Yes, that is a great idea. You don't have to have an Instagram account to open this link right here. It will take you to the link by this account from Instagram. It's a separate link, and in this person really shares all of these. This is a mood tracker, okay? They are mood trackers. So, and they have it blank. So if you're a teacher of a language other than Spanish, you can print it blank and you can customize it by adding March in your language and then different emotions to assign to each one of the colors. So how do we do this in the classroom? It doesn't matter if they're little, or if they're high school, they still enjoy these activities. And it is a very, it's a discovery activity, because at the end of the month, you are going to realize which emotions are more prevalent in your life. And that is very interesting. If you realize that all the time you're feeling annoyed, like enfadado, annoyed, or bored. Okay, so what can we do to change that? So for this particular example, you have the month of March and you have all the dates from March. So today, if it's today is the 14th, I will probably color here yellow because I am happy, or maybe I will color another color that applies to my emotion. But yes, they are using the language. Obviously, they're not using complete phrases or anything like that, but they're using the language or to express how they feel. And that is a wonderful activity, and it is free and available to you, and you can access it through the link. And someone asked initially if this presentation is going to be shared. Yes, you will receive an email later on with the presentation. So we talk about self-management and managing emotions, resilience, managing stress, and self-motivation. So when I developed generalized anxiety disorder, and I had it a couple years ago, and I still have sometimes mild little attacks, but I know how to cope with them better because I was back then, a couple years ago, I was not good at managing my own stress. And over the years, I have learned so many things that I now can share with my students. So I share this to say that it is okay if you feel like you're not good at one of these. It is totally okay, because this is going to help you get better for yourself and for your students. So here we have, you also have many supplements. If you use a textbook, this is an example from the book Reporteros. And this is exactly what I mean by you do not have to walk away from the target language to implement social emotional learning. So we have some activities in here that talk about how do you feel when this is happening? What is your feeling when you have a lot of work? So tell me in the chat, how do you feel when you have a lot of grading to do? So homework may not be something that we do unless you are in grad school or something like that. But how do you feel when you have a load of grading to do? Exactly. So that's probably how our students feel. And again, we are using a language to connect with our emotions, right? So the idea is not to practice the emotions. The idea is to use it for a communicative purpose, and also to talk about the emotions, of course. So how do you feel when you see a scary movie? How do you feel when you see a scary movie? For me, the world will be petrified because I totally stay away from scary movies. I do not do scary movies at all. And my husband and my son cannot understand why I can't share a scary movie with them, but I'm sorry, I can't do the scary movies. How do you feel when you start your summer break? So please share with me in the chat. What is your emotion? Or Rocio also does not watch scary movies. How do you feel when you start your summer break? But let's not talk about summer. Let's talk about spring break. Relieve, libertad, free, overwhelmed. Exactly. So just all of these emotions, I'm pretty sure as I was asking you these questions, those emotions were a little bit palpable for you, right? You could kind of feel a little bit on that mode. And then you can express how you feel. So we are able to see that, and that, again, this is an example, and there are other examples as well that you can see and hear this video where Spanish speakers are going to talk about what are the ingredients for happiness. What are the ingredients for happiness to them? What does it mean to be happy? So the students get to see that. And also, then the students have to write their own recipe for happiness. And it is a beautiful activity. It's completely connected to social emotional learning. And you can see that you don't have to walk away from the target language to embed social emotional learning, which is exactly the title of this session. Oh, John. So in here, we also see another example from the book Mapas, which is another textbook. And you might have similar examples already in your possession about emotions and the feelings. For example, we have, let's read this list of activities. Do you understand the meaning of these activities? And then, what emotions do these activities evoke? For example, a test, back again to test. Or let's not talk about tests because this is for students. Let's talk about teacher evaluations. How do you feel? What emotion comes to mind when you hear, well, if you ever hear that your admin is coming to do a teacher evaluation tomorrow? Or maybe you don't get a notification. How do you feel? Confident, amazing, a little bit nervous. Yes. So for me, it depends. Even if I have a wonderful lesson going on, I still have to acknowledge I always feel nervous, anxiety. And with knowing that, with being able to identify that emotion as adults, we can look deeper and say, well, why do I feel nervous? Why do I feel nervous? What can I do to feel less nervous? Maybe I can go exercise this evening. Maybe I can do something nice for myself that I really enjoy, treat myself to something. Or if I feel nervous, is it because I don't have all my ducks in a row, etc. So that's what I mean. So it goes beyond just talking about feelings. Yes, we want to identify the feelings, but also we want to be able, if there's something about that feeling, we want to be able to react to that feeling in a positive way. So thank you so much for sharing your answers. I appreciate it so very much. Here's another one of the social emotional learning competencies. We have social awareness, and this one just goes hand in hand. If you teach in the United States and you're familiar with the 5 C's of ACTFL, which I am linking at the end of this presentation, it just, combines beautifully with social awareness, with the SEL social awareness competency, because it has to do with being empathetic, with appreciating diversity, with respecting others, with civic engagements, and appreciating differences. So if that is not what we do at the core of our world language classes, I mean, that I think that doesn't sum it up, but it's a good bit of what we promote inside our lessons. So when we're talking about being empathetic, we want to, an example of this in the classroom would be, which voices are we bringing to our learners? So it is wonderful to bring people that our students already recognize. Maybe I know right now Shakira has been just all over the media, and how she's handling her emotions also. If you have an upper level class, you could discuss this, that totally. But also we want to bring other voices of people who maybe are not as known, but who contribute just as much to the cultures where our target language is spoken. So with that being said, we also want our students to connect with our local communities. What types of activities are we creating for our learners, where our students can go use the language and give back and interact with the people from the community? So in here, I have 2 examples. And when I talk about social awareness, just because of these 2 pictures, I don't want to say that social awareness happens outside of the classroom, or that it must happen outside of the classroom, because that is not the case at all. But I would say that social awareness, when we are doing this inside our class, it's going to, you are going to have some of the best moments as a teacher when you take your students outside to the actual community. So in the first picture on the left, you can see my students with the Spanish Honor Society, they went to talk about the different programs that our district has to offer for students and for future students. So they talked to parents about these programs, and specifically, obviously, to showcase our school as well. And they did this in Spanish for Spanish-speaking parents, because we do have a large population of Hispanic parents in our district. And then in this other one, simply what they went to do, it was last year St. Patrick's Day Parade, which is very, very a very big event in Savannah. It's like the second or third biggest in the entire country of the US. And our students had to hold the flags. We needed about 30 people, because it doesn't look that big, but it is huge. And our students got to march and interact And it was just, it was a very nice activity for all of our learners. And so these are some of the social awareness, but again, it does not have to happen outside of the class. In fact, if you have, I'm sure you have units, maybe you can think of units that really are really bring those opportunities to offer the students the opportunity to be more empathetic, to show empathy, to respect others, to appreciate differences, because many of the things that are done in the target culture are different. But and it's by understanding the differences that they will also learn to appreciate. But if we don't bring those voices from if we don't bring those voices, then they don't have the opportunity to appreciate the differences and to develop that empathy. So here is another example as well, and this is something that you could do on a piece of paper as well. And it's talking about, it's from the book Reporteros, and it's talking about the circle of care, because we know that our students come from different families, different backgrounds. A family could mean so many things. So we establish, what is the circle of care? Who belongs in my circle of care? So here I am. And then, I have my coach, this person, my mom, and these other people that I list in the circle of care. So, and then we can write about we can read about the circle of care, and then we can write about our own circle of care. And it's a beautiful activity. It is something that we don't have to leave the target language on the side and do it in English. We can do it in the target language to support language they already know, or to support new language if we give them the proper scaffolds. And we will also be addressing scaffolds in a moment. And this is what I mean by bringing different voices. I really like, this is from the book, the textbook Mapas. I really like how we are, we need to be in the classroom. We need to bring the voices of different, not just artists, not just singers. There are so many people contributing, making wonderful contributions. And we want our students to connect with different people. So we have Aldo Villegas, un artista de hip hop mexicano, Mexican hip hop artist. And we have just very rich examples of to develop that empathy, to appreciate those differences. So the next ones would be relationship skills, which has to do with resolving conflicts, listening actively, cooperation and teamwork, and communicating effectively. I will tell you this, sometimes I myself need some help resolving my own conflicts. And sometimes I myself need some help communicating effectively. And again, this is because we are all a work in progress. So social emotional learning is also a journey on itself. And there are many activities that we can do in the classroom to support this. I know that when we are doing listening activities, that in itself has to do with listening actively, but it is even more beautiful when we strategically pair our students up together to listen to each other, to learn about each other. And also when we bring community activities, when we bring collaboration, whether that's through a team activity, and we want to bring those team activities. So I know I had the question, how long do you usually practice this SEL activities with your students? It depends. I know I do at least 1 or 2 every day. And what do I mean by one? For example, my social emotional check-ins, that's my first activity. That's how we start the class. And I will share some examples of what that looks like. But also I try to do at least one activity that is teamwork in the classroom, so that they have that opportunity to find the strengths. And we'll be sharing more examples as we move on. When it comes to decision making, it is important for learners to learn how to identify problems, learn how to solve problems, how to think critically how to set goals, and also opportunities for them to work on their leadership skills. One of the examples that I want to share with you is this example right here, which is very popular. I know I see it in many classrooms. We have the performance indicators for proficiency, and it is great to talk to our learners about their goals when it comes to proficiency. And I use these performance indicators, and I explain to my students what it means to be on the novice range, what it means to be in the intermediate range, and what it means to be in the advanced range. And then when once we understand that to a certain extent, then we can set goals for ourselves. So for example, in my Spanish 3 class, if I say the goal here is going to be for you to be intermediate low, between intermediate low and intermediate mid. However, obviously some students are going to reach higher, and some students are going to probably barely reach intermediate low or somewhere in the middle. And understanding that everybody is on a journey when it comes to language acquisition, understanding that we are, because of different reasons, we are all going to learn at a different pace, and we're all going to acquire the language at a different pace. But the important thing is that we work towards that growth. So that's one way in which we can address setting goals over and over and over again in our classes. And it's probably something that you already do. Rocio is sharing that she did the circle of care with her 5th graders. And with that, they created a list of positive adjective words to later use for positive notes for each other and others in their school. That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So this particular example, going back to, we were talking about this other example of relationship skills and cooperation and teamwork, is another wonderful example of how you can get your students to collaborate together. It comes from the book Reporteros. And this one, the students are given the task as a group to prepare a brochure to present a route, a trip that is sustainable, that is ecologically sustainable. So we have that appreciation for the environment factor, that empathy. And then we also have the teamwork that needs to happen. And what I love about this is that it's broken into steps. And it tells the students first to decide what type of travelers they're trying to what type of travelers and they want to participate on this trip, and what places around Argentina they're going to include in this route. And then also they have to research on this on the following themes and explain. So it tells the student what to do, and they can divide and conquer the task. So it is another example and that you can find in textbooks, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time, or you may already have an activity that works for you that is very similar to this. Okay, so I'm not done yet. It says conclusion, but this is not the conclusion. The conclusion here, but with me just introducing this this SEL competency, the different competencies that we just talked about, self-awareness, etc., is that social emotional learning is not something new, nor one more thing to do to add to your already busy plate. And regardless of your teaching personality, whether you're calm or you're a little bit more outgoing with your students, you can provide social emotional experiences to build self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and decision-making. And I will go as far as to say that if you don't feel like you are competent in one of these SEL skills, it is okay, my friend. I was not competent in many of them. And I'm going to excuse myself for a second because my doggy is jumping up and down. My apologies, but he was just being too loud. So with that being said, if you feel like, oh, maybe there's one skill that I don't feel as strong on, you can research that one alone and find some activities that are going to pertain to that. So let's talk about how do we gain a clear idea of how to help students strengthen their social emotional learning and language skills. And we already went through some examples. We have already seen some examples, but I want to share more examples because I know that this is what you want, an example that you can use as early as tomorrow. So I use this platform. It's called Mentimeter. You might have used it already. There's a free version, and the free version, the only bad thing about the free version is that you have to delete slides, or you can use, it gives you limited slides. And this is specific activity is one of my examples for my activity in the morning. I want my students to tell me how they're doing, and they just go into the menti.com, they put the code in, and then they type their emotion words that come to mind. And this is what Menti itself, it kind of puts it in a word cloud form. And I kind of can see, you know, that they're tired, that they're exhausted, that they're happy, anxious, sleepy, whatever mood they're feeling, it tells me. So it's one way in which I can do it. And here's another example, same question, but instead of having them give me the adjectives, I made it a little bit easier. They just put it in there. And yes, it is anonymous. This particular one is anonymous. And I will know if all of them participate because I have the number 19 in there. So if I know my class has 29 kids, I would say, I am waiting on 10 more. And that's it, you know, just kind of like, talk about if they have given me an answer or not. Just mention that I'm waiting on 10 more. Okay, now 5 more, excelente, etc. And yes, I can see that most of them are doing well. And now that informs me also of the class, because I want to make sure that everybody is in this top 3, because I know that if I have this at the bottom, then, you know, if I have a lot of students here at the bottom, maybe I need to rethink about what my lesson looks like that day, okay? Because, and I have changed lessons. When my students have said in their SEL check-ins in the morning, when many of them are saying they're exhausted and tired, if I have a lot of activities where I'm the one talking, I will totally change it up and maybe play a game in between, or maybe switch it up. And I have done that to guide that. Just to help my students with that, because I know many of my learners have jobs after school. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for sharing. I know Caroline just shared one that she made herself. So that's an activity that I want to share with self-awareness, and at the end I will share a link where I have many that I have made that I use, so I don't have to think about a different one each day, so that I have different ones each day. So I'll share a link of the ones that I use later on, and I'll explain a little bit more on that. Because sometimes I ask them, how are you feeling today? So I changed the question and I worded a little bit differently. And then I have them give me the emotion and connect it to a picture, and then I have them tell me why. But in order for them to tell me why, especially if they're in a level 1, in a level 2, we want to give them a lot of scaffolding. And by scaffolding, maybe that means coming up with phrases that they're going to be able to use and understand, so that they can express. So when I ask my students, how are you feeling today? They tell me, I feel like the picture number 3, because I'm tired because I had to work a lot yesterday. Or sometimes they tell me, I feel like I am here, but not here mentally. Oh my God, when they give me those phrases, I'm just definitely, they get super creative. They get super creative with the scaffolds. So I highly suggest that. And I will share some scaffolds for Spanish, but you can make a copy of the scaffolds that I'll share with you, and then you can put them English and your target language. So for self-management, here's one strategy that I use that my students in high school appreciate so much. And I know for a fact, I don't even need to ask anybody. I know for a fact that if you have something like this for middle school and elementary school, they are going to be so much more appreciative. Like I said, my high schoolers are already beyond appreciative, but I know that the younger students will be even more appreciative. So in order to help with self-management, First of all, we want healthy ways to manage emotions through a calm space. So this is part of my calm space. Okay, and if I can be honest, this other part, we were working on a project this day. So the other part of the calm space actually has my students' project. So it's not looking as calm, but this is a good part, and it gives you a general idea of what I have on my calm space. So I have a little squishy stress balls, okay? And I have these books I purchased from the Dollar Tree. They are coloring for tranquility, different coloring books that have like mandalas and things like that in them. And I try to have a variety that is not only for, for one particular type of student. So I try to have a variety. Then I have this puzzle that I received in the mail. So I put it in there, and students have actually used it. And then I have some art creating kits that, they're just very simple. And my students have made some of these. And I also have this puppet, I don't know what you call them, fidget thingies, but yes, they are puppet manipulatives, whatever you want to call it. And then this is an actual, it's a drawing book, it's a sketchbook, because I know I have many students who are artists. So how does this work? Normally, I don't really have to necessarily say, oh, I don't really, I say that this is there for them, but it's either they're having a really bad day and they tell me at the beginning, and I give them a couple moments to go, just kind of calm down a little bit. Or sometimes when they are done with their work, they come to this corner and they engage in one of these activities. And it's just the fact that I have this for them means a lot to my students. So just the fact to set something up. And I can't tell you a right or wrong way to do this, because you want to feel you want to feel comfortable with having a calm space. So for me, comfort looks like telling my students, hey, I put this together for you. What else would you love to see here that would help you in those hard days, calm or focus, or whatever it is you need to do to just feel at ease. And they will give me ideas. They have given me ideas or some other little things that I have not purchased yet, but that I have on my list. And yes, the high schoolers love fidgets. That is very, very true. And yeah, so this is an idea of something you can use. So if you feel, because at the beginning, I also felt that I was not the best at managing my emotions and getting myself to calm down. But with time, I have learned, and this is a great way to start that. And this is also helps with stress management, because believe it or not, coloring does help you calm a lot. Planning tips and organizational support, goals to reach as a class, and opportunities to make healthy choices by providing options. So I will share with you a clear example of this later on: organization, planning, goals to reach as a class. But I want to talk a little bit about opportunities to make healthy choices. We talked about how employers want students to have SEL skills. And one of those is having the wisdom of when you should use your mobile device while in class and while at work, and when not to use it. So if you are at a school where there are no rules, the students, no rules as far as devices. And what I mean by that is that your school does not take all of their devices when they walk in there. My school, all the students have to bring their devices, and they have it in my class. But I give them the choice. I give them the choice to put it away. Unless if we are doing an assessment that day, I take up their phones. That's the one day that I will take up their phones, and the phones will go in a designated area. Each person has a number. But other than that, they have the choice, not the choice to use it. They're told that the phone has to be out of my sight. And then, of course, yes, they're teenagers. They're going to glance at their phone. But if they're just flat out being disrespectful by engaging with their phone and not with me, then I have to show them that how that's not beneficial to their learning. So how do I do this? I do this by having a one-on-one conversation with them. And I do this by letting them know ahead of time through a class contract, what are my expectations? So what you do at the beginning of the year when you introduce your expectations, when you introduce your norms, your rules, that is social emotional learning. And we must follow up with that and be consistent with that throughout the school and academic year. And also with social awareness, as I mentioned, is at the core of the language class. You can make any unit theme that you have, that you already have. You don't have to go create a new unit. But when you start making new units, think about it. How can I tweak it a little bit to have a couple of social emotional learning moments? How and we can also add and facilitate opportunities for feedback. So I know you have used many personalized questions and answers. I know at the beginning of units, whether you create your own units, you purchase them from wherever, or you have a textbook that has an opener unit. In those units, you're going to see that normally they ask a question about the students. They ask the students questions about themselves. So this is an example for one of the song activities. I love to create, use music in the classroom. And it was to connect the theme of the song to the students. And I asked them, what would you like to do to minimize fast fashion, the use of fast fashion? Well, first, before this question, I asked them if they knew what fast fashion was. And some of them did, some of them didn't. And then, we kind of talk about different ways in which we can help minimize the use of fast fashion. And again, we're bringing social awareness to a global issue inside our class. Which song did I use with this? It was a song Ropa Cara by Camilo. And then this is the second example, is an activity that I share that has to do, it was an infographic. I just picked an infographic. I went to Google. It was Earth Day, which is coming up, by the way. It was Earth Day. And I went and picked an infographic. And when I went to Google and I said infographic for Earth Day in Spanish, or well, I actually typed that in Spanish. And then I saw several of them, and I found one that worked for me that I wanted to break down for my learners. An infographic is an authentic resource. So I wanted to work for my level 2. So I wanted them to pick from the pictures, what is useful vocabulary? What is the purpose of Earth Day? How can I raise awareness? According to the infographic had different ways to raise awareness about Earth Day. And then I had other activities, but the idea here is, yes, we're talking about Earth Day and things that we can do to take care of the Earth. We're doing it in the target language, and we are raising that social awareness. We are raising that empathy for the Earth, etc. So this is what kind of a glimpse of what that looks like. And now when we talk about relationship skills, and they can be built through pair work, structured group work, brain breaks, common goals, and journaling. And I already kind of gave you an example of what it looked like as a journaling when I was young, and my ELA teacher would write comments on my prompts. So as I mentioned, sometimes she would correct my grammar, or sometimes she would simply say to me, ask me another question, and we would have a conversation through that journal. And to me, it was one of the highlights of my day to go to my ELA class 10th grade and read what that teacher had left in there and keep that conversation going. It was very, very special. And I know we mentioned in here, many of you mentioned in here the use of brain breaks. Brain breaks are a wonderful way to build community in the classroom, to restart that thinking cycle, because the students only have such attention span. We want to reset that. That's an opportunity to do that through brain breaks. And for this reason, because we know the students want to collaborate, that's what they want to do the most. They do want to collaborate. You have those students that want to work by themselves always and forever. And I like to give them a choice. And once I know who those students are in my class, the ones who want to work alone, if I really want them to work as part of a group, I will have a one-on-one conversation with them. And I would say, sweetie, today I would like for you to be part of this group. And this is because later on, when you have a job, you're probably at some point going to be part of a team, and you're going to have to work with other people. And sometimes I must go as far as say that, sometimes I don't like working with people, but if I have to, I must. And just kind of, that is a way in which you teach SEL, you pull them aside and you just have a conversation. That's also social emotional learning. Those teaching moments, if you find a teaching moment, something happens, conflict resolution, that's social emotional learning too. Here's some slides that I have to support some of my group work. When I assign groups at the beginning, if I have a group of 3 or 4 people, I like to have no more than 3 or 4. I have a task for each person in the group, and I give them a responsibility, and I give them phrases so that they could hype each other up, and in the target language. And that's what you can see here: the leader, the timekeeper, the organizer, the animator, or hype person, as we call it in the class. And then at the end, we go through the group activity, and at the end I have a little reflection sheet. And then in the reflection sheet, we come all together as a class, and they're sitting with the groups as a class. And then I said, okay, how do you rate your leader between 0 and 10, and why? And normally they rate them very high, or I haven't had any that rated somebody terrible, because I also try to be strategic with who my leaders are, depending on the skill we're working on. And I have something like this so that they can facilitate, so that it can help them, and it can facilitate some target language. So if I ask, ¿cómo fue tu líder? ¿Fue muy bueno o más o menos? And then, the student would say, they were a 10. Why? Because they work very hard. So they would tell me that in the target language. And we have this in place so that we can follow and we can understand. And when it comes to decision making, we want to help the learners make wise decisions by co-constructing classroom agreements, as I mentioned, by establishing clear consequences, and by maintaining that accountability. As I mentioned about the cell phones and how the students can use when they can use the cell phones, and when is it not okay to use a cell phone. And I know that for many of us, sometimes it can be a constant battle, but as long as we remain consistent, I know that it takes only a one-on-one meeting, and worst comes to worst, a couple phone calls home. And then for me, that student doesn't try again for a while to be on that phone. But phone is one example of how we can teach our learners how to be responsible with using different things, and how they use their time wisely. I have a comment that says, sometimes you can tell students to provide constructive feedback, what went well and what needs improvement. Absolutely, absolutely. And you should. If you find those opportunities during your lessons, always do that. It could be an excellent exit ticket as well. And so we want to provide our students constant opportunities to set goals. Here's another example of what this looks like. And maybe you already have a very, very similar rubric. So we have two different, we have a self and peer assessment and a self and peer assessment. Well, they're both for group work. And in here, you can see it's for a specific project, right? And you ask the students, you give them a checklist. So this is important because, you want to point out what are all the things that need to be in there? Because for us, I know that I have been guilty myself. And when I do this, because I still do this sometimes, when I explain something too quickly and I don't have clear enough instructions, and then everything breaks into chaos, because it happens to me. Sometimes I said, okay, let's back up a second. I apologize. I wasn't clear in my instructions. How are we going to break this down? What is not being understood? So, and then, I acknowledge that I failed to communicate clearly. And then, we kind of just set it up for success all over again. And that is a very valuable lesson to see us as humans too, and to recognize, that, I don't know, sometimes we might not be the best communicators. And the other thing too, I know that my students are going to be working on a project the next couple of days. The next 2 days, they're going to be working on a project. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow, I'm going to tell them when is it going to be due. And then we're going to break it down together. Like what's going to be due in 30 minutes and what should be the goal by the end of the day. And then I'm going to ask them, what else do you need from me? Here are the scaffolds and the things I'm going to provide for you already for you to be successful. What else do you need? What other support do you need from me, your teacher, other than this? Okay, and then, you know, we go from there. And then I check in with them at the middle of the class and then at the end of the class. So, yes, so this is an example. These rubrics are inside the book Reporteros. And here's a one as well for, here you can see how well you progress in a unit. So at the end of each unit, you have a checklist and you have specific feedback. What can you do if you want to improve? This one is on Reporteros 2. And then, how do we, I'm going to, in the last couple of minutes, and then I'll answer all the questions. And thank you so much for staying with me, is increase your teacher toolkit with practical and sustainable SEL ideas. So I'm going to share some resources with you. And here in this particular one, you have, if you're thinking, well, I have no idea what to do, how to start, I need some ideas. You will click in that link when you receive the presentation, because you're going to receive it in an email. And then please download that document. And in there, you're going to see a ton of ideas that you can tweak for languages, okay? So those are, if you just kind of want to, you know, start brainstorming, maybe for next year, or maybe for the next couple of weeks, depending on how, you know, how ready you feel to start this, or to, you know, keep growing in this. I mentioned the World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages here by ACFL in the US. You can click there and then you can read about those so that you can see what I meant where we were talking about social awareness and what do I mean by that, with the communication, with the cultures, with the connections, with the 5 C's of languages. And also, I have 2 book recommendations for you that if you would like to learn more, they give you very precise examples. I would not be recommending to you books that I have not read, okay? And the easier way for me to share them with you was through an Amazon link. And I do want to point out that I don't have any affiliation with Amazon. So I just share it with you that way because that was the easiest way for me to share. So you can check out those books. They're very, very good books. Also, if you are already using Canva for education, that is a website that if you go, you create an account, it is free for teachers. You can click on SEL check-in and you can see all of these activities that are gonna pop up there. And all you have to do is change it to the language that you teach. So if I want to do affirmations, I would put it in Spanish, and maybe I will add a couple of words or phrases here to support my learners, and then they can write the affirmations in there. Emotion wheel. So there are a lot of activities that are already SEL activities to get you going, and they are completely available for you for free through Canva for education. And this other one is not necessarily for language teaching, but there are 2 things that I want to point out. Go to the site, or you can go to Google and go to Be Good People, and it will give you a ton of activities for different grade levels. And you can, there are some, I mean, there are entire lesson plans, like very explicit lesson plans. I mean, explicit as in like well explained, that's what I meant, okay? And there are very good lesson plans in there, very complete, detailed lesson plans. And yes, I will definitely suggest this activity. And then in there, they also have these calming strategies toolbox. And you can print this and laminate these. And this is in English, but you could totally put, I don't know, sometimes I use this and I put like a text box over it and I put it in my target language. And you can print this out. Like I want to print this out and put them in my calm corner so that students can learn more about how to calm different calming strategies. So they're all in there and you can use them. And in here, this lastly, please leave all the questions. If you have questions, use the Q&A feature and I will answer your questions. But I do want to share once again some other resources that you can have to get started in your journey with SEL. that is the sheet about the emotions, and then brain breaks ideas. I get all my brain breaks from La Maestra Loca. Also, Gratitude Challenge by Samara Spielberg and her school team. It's in here as well. There's a hexagonal thinking activity to build connections at the beginning of the school year that I created. And this is what I was talking about for check-ins. Every morning, this is an example of a check-in. I just copy and paste the slide that I want to use that particular day. And this is what I mean by giving them scaffolds. Like, I want my students to be able to tell me the why. So they tell me how they feel, and then, you know, they tell me why. And with time, you take away the scaffold and they can still write just as much. And in addition to that, I have these ones right here. These ones are available in Spanish and French, thanks to a wonderful teacher, Dana Miller-Kitch, who translated this to French. And then I have this on Quizlet, and I'm sharing with you the Quizlet of these. You can see all of these other phrases that I given my students. And what I do too is I go to, no, I don't go to share. I go to print, and then I tell it to print it for me as a glossary or as a table, like as a glossary. And I give it to my learners. So I give them phrases so that they can add more details. So I have one to talk about having a good day and to talk about having a not so great day. And then finally, if you, I have a little guided lesson for goal setting that I am also going to be sharing with you. You will be receiving this presentation through email. I hope that this session has been, helpful to you, that it sparked a lot of just desire to try more social emotional learning and integrate it more. And one more thing, all of these are, again, free activities, and the examples that I used today in the presentation were from the book Reporteros and Mapas from CLED World Languages. If you are interested, you can reach out to them to get some samples and check them out.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Berta. I think this was very useful for everyone. So let's go ahead with the Q&A. So our first question is very simple. What is a calendar task?
Oh, calendar talk. Okay, calendar talk. It is when you can bring out a regular calendar, and then you focus only on the week that you're in right now. So right now it is the week of the 13th through the 17th, school week, okay? Or maybe I want to talk from Monday all the way through Sunday. So I bring those little, I can pull up the calendar and I can focus on that calendar, and I can say, okay, normally I do mine on Monday. I know some teachers like to do their calendar talk every day or every other day. And again, this is one of those things that I'm going to say, you know your students better and you know yourself better. That self-awareness comes into place for us as teachers as well. So for me, Monday is the day I'm going to do my calendar talk. And if we didn't have school on Monday, I do it on Tuesday, whatever day we are starting the school week. And I talk to my students and I ask questions in the target language about, like, what is the weather like today? Or, who has a birthday this week? Does anybody in your, in your family, in your circle of care have a birthday this week? Anybody special, a friend? And they answer all those questions in the target language. And then we also can look up different happenings around the culture where the target language is spoken. So if something is happening specifically on a country that week, I want to kind of highlight that. And then I can ask my students about it. So it's a great opportunity to bring those days and talk about that. So that is, in a nutshell, what calendar is. You break down the information for your students in a language that they can understand. So you can do calendar talk with level 1, very, 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 short, tiny sentences. And then you can do calendar talk with level 3. And it looks totally, it's essentially the same activity. It's just different language that is being given. Okay.
Perfect. Very clear. Thank you. So next question would be, What do you do when students refuse to do these activities for fear of being judged by their peers? What do you suggest in these cases?
Well, I personally normally don't have students who do not want to do the SEL activities, probably because I do share with them at the beginning. I'm just very, very, very vulnerable about my own journey. So maybe I think that's one of the reasons why maybe they do the activities anyway. And then also my school has, and that's probably something else that helps. It is the expectation that every student is going to participate in the activities, and we have a school-wide program where students they all want to get, they all want to get the points for a given week. So they get a quarterly grade, and this is a school-wide thing. This is not my class thing. So I think that's another incentive for them to do and to engage. But honestly, the way that we present these activities has a lot to do whether they're going to do it or not. But what I would do, because maybe not for the SEL activities, but I have had students who I did one activity for my students and they were just not wanting to do it. And what I do with them is I ask them first, why do they not want to do it? Because I want to know why. First thing, we don't want to take it personal because it may not have anything to do with us. And then, once I talk it out with the student, I would say, well, they can either try to join the class again and do it with us, or I can give them something alternative to do in the moment. That's why those coloring sheets are great, because if they're not going to do it, that's what's going to happen. And also, if it's just one student or two students, I acknowledge those students. But if obviously what we don't want is that because the whole class sees that 2 or 3 students are getting away with not doing it, then that creates that other effect that you're going to have more students not doing it. So if one student doesn't want to do it, or 2 students, we can have a conversation with those students in private, see we can get them to do it and in a way without forcing them to do it. But I think for me, like for example, with the activities about taking deep breaths with Carolina, I love it because when my students are about to do speaking tests, there is an exercise where she does that. It's called La Locomotora, the train, and they have to do like, and my students are doing that before the test, and it's just very cute to see it, that they try to calm themselves down, and they might do it as a joke, but you know what? It does not matter. Like they are practicing that.
Perfect. That's a great technique. So the next question would be, how can these be incorporated into a beginner level class or classes for younger grades?
Okay, so precisely decide which ones are going to be easier to incorporate with the younger grades. For example, you saw my first examples that had social emotional check-ins that I had with just one word. Talking about the Menti examples with the Mentimeter, and they only had to do one word, or they had to move the little circles to the right location. So when we're thinking about novices, what can novices do? And then if I'm asking them, how are you? They can totally answer that question. And if you saw my examples that I just shared that had scaffolds, maybe my scaffolds are going to be shorter and smaller because I want them to ultimately take away that scaffold. So by the end of the semester, they don't need that to write, their entire sentence. But yes, so what I suggest, think about the language that your students are going to need to do that task in its most simplified form, in a way that it's frequent to your students and also to Spanish speakers. So yes, it might require a little bit of you creating a sheet that is going to empower them to write more. But obviously, we don't want to make it so overwhelming. No, we want to keep it simplified at their level. That's the key.
Perfect. So we're almost there. Our next question says, when you do these activities outside of the classroom, the examples you were showing about with the community, do you generally offer them as graded assignments or just for volunteers?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Well, Many of these activities, we have two clubs, two organizations at my school. One is the Spanish Honor Society. And I know that we do ours through AATSP. But you can start your own Spanish Honor Society and have your own guidelines if you want. And I know there's also French Honor Society. I know essentially every language has like their own honor society through a specific organization. And so for those, the Spanish Honor Society is the one that puts together and organizes an outing or where we're going to go to serve. And then we invite our students inside our classes. And that could be, sometimes we may offer a grade, but it's not a forced grade. So, and we don't really, sometimes we may phrase it as community service. If it's real community service, they do get hours for that. Or sometimes we may say, okay, you know, you will receive a grade for attending and for participating in this. And that's kind of how we present it to the class. And usually, you know, seniors need community service hours. And I think that's about in every high school that they need a specific number. But we also have a lot of students who are not seniors, who just really enjoy being at these activities. And I'm going to be very honest with you. Does it reach every student in my Spanish class, all 100 plus of them? No, not all 100 plus of them are coming to these activities, but a good bit of them do come throughout the years. And it's great to have these opportunities for them. It's wonderful because they get to use the language in a real context. And that's where they feel so excited once they go to this event and they can communicate, even if all they said was like one sentence, or maybe they had a full conversation, depending. It's just, you know, that whole service aspect is powerful for the students. So yeah, so it's not forced. And sometimes we may use it as extra credit for something. And that's also another incentive.
Great. And now let's hear our final question. I'm just going to retrieve one of the questions that was in the chat that we actually, that you kind of treated in the webinar itself, which is how frequent and how long do you usually practice SEL activities with your students?
Yes. So yeah, as I mentioned, I do a check-in every morning. So that's a guaranteed activity that's going to happen every morning. And every Friday, I ask them, how do you feel about your weekend? And what are you looking forward to doing this weekend? And they are allowed to say, I'm not looking forward to the weekend. I don't have any plans. And when my students respond with things like, I don't have any plans, I said, that's great. You get to rest, you get to relax. And, you know, we also normalize that it is okay to not do anything. Because many times our students here are always constantly hearing, I know I grew up, I love my mom, but I grew up constantly hearing, anytime I was in my room as a teenager, I always, like, my mom would say to me, oh, you're just lazy, you're not doing anything, you should be washing dishes, blah, 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 blah. So therefore, I grew up a very workaholic human being, and I have had to work hard at not being that. So many of our students, you know, may be getting the same message. So it's an opportunity when I ask them about their weekend. I ask them, oh, okay, you get to do nothing. Amazing. You get to relax. You get to relax. Wonderful. And, you know, yes, you know, there's power in relaxing. So I make comments about how important just not doing anything. It's okay. It's okay. There's a time for everything. So those check-ins I do every day. I try to do, you know, those other activities like think and share, parent share, think, pair, share. Like there's different variations of there. There's another one. I mean, all of those activities are social emotional learning activities. And as I began this presentation, you are already doing a lot of them in your classes. And that's why I went through the 5 competencies and explain them a little bit so that you could connect those and say, hey, you know, and as self-reflection is actually part of this competency. And then you can determine what you are already doing with your students. And once you see that, once you see what activities you could do under each competency, you will see that social emotional learning gets easier and you're doing it every day in some way, shape, or form.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. I believe a lot of us felt you with that workaholic vibe. So thank you for the answer. And that was the final question. So once again, Berta, thank you very much for joining us. It was a great presentation. And thank you everyone for being with us tonight. Just so you know, our next webinar is going to be in Spanish, which is called El Sílabo con Base en Tareas. That's going to be this Thursday, the 16th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time as well. I'm just going to place the link here just in case. And our next webinar in English is going to be next Tuesday, and that one is selecting and adapting authentic materials for the world language classroom. That's Tuesday the 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember that you will get all the slides that Berta gave us with all the links and all the information, as well as the recording. And once again, thank you all for joining us. You can check our newsletter, and I hope you all have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for joining.